My name is Lakeisha Cobbs-Hayes. I am a business owner of a little over 9 years. I own two businesses. One is Key Essentials to Behavior Management, where we work with children and adults with disabilities, providing behavioral health services. When you think of applied behavior analysis, we work with children that are 2 all the way up to adults. We have residential facilities that we help oversee. We work in schools. We work in home, and I have 5 clinics across the United States. Look at me.
Right.
I know, that's crazy. So I have 5 clinics across the United States. In those clinics, we have 4 here in California and 1 in Georgia. So we're still working and growing and whatnot. So the other company I have is Strategic Behavior Consultants. In Strategic Behavior Consultants, we work with small business owners, service business owners, and teaching them how to sustain, scale, and build their business, teaching them how to work on their business, not in their business. So we have a habit of starting a business and not necessarily doing all of the things that we need to do to work on the business. I had a conversation with Miss Hilda because we are in a CEO group together. I recently wrote a book, and she was like, Keisha, I'd love it if you come and talk to the group. So we were discussing what we were going to talk about, and there's this concept that in business, we're not supposed to fail, right? There's this myth that failing is I did something bad, and actually failing is learning. So I was like, I made a statement like failing is inevitable, but growing is optional. And that's how a lot of businesses fail right now, is that you have decided that you're not going to grow. And so that's one of the things that we're talking about today, and a little bit about my journey. So let's see. 1, I've walked this challenging path. I teach others how to walk the path. I have a mastermind group. Those individuals are making $500K and or more, and we have a couple of different retreats. And so just a little bit about where I came from. I was in a foster home. I graduated from high school with literally straight D's, and I call it a mercy pass. I literally had this lady praying for me because there was no way I should be where I am. So I did that. I had 6 kids by the time that I was 28. Yes, I went back to school when they were 3, when my youngest kids were 3. I started from the bottom. I had to take English. Before I can get credits for English, I had to take the English courses. It was crazy. From there, I ended up going straight through. I ended up at East LA College, then Cal State LA, and then I got my master's degree. I did all of that within almost like a 10-year span. It seemed fairly quick. With 6 kids, yes, with 6 kids, I definitely did all of those things. And so I started my business because I worked in early childhood education, and then I went from early childhood education to special education. And from special education, I worked with multiple, and I do mean multiple, different kids and in different areas from LA all the way out here to the Inland Empire. And I was going to be a speech pathologist, but when they told me I had to get a 4.0 with 4 kids, y'all knew that was just out of the question. I am a proud member of the C's Get Degrees program. I have no problem getting a C. And so when they told me that I wasn't going to be able to be a speech pathologist with those C's and B's that I had, because, I had 6 kids and I was trying to go to school, then I was walking through the mall and they told me like, hey, why don't you come in and see what we're doing and get a degree in teaching with specialization in applied behavior analysis. I was like, what the heck is that? Like, why would I do that? And so when I realized what it was, I was like, oh, I can write my own ticket. I've been doing this for the last 15 years. Absolutely. Sign me up. I ended up working for this lady, and she decided that I should be head of her program, which was insane. And I was just like, dude, I don't think that you want me head of your program, a black woman, a young black woman at that, and overseeing white men, because typically there's this distinction of that's not necessarily who I want to listen to at this time. And so we were having some, back and forth, and she was like, no, I need you to take ownership. And that's how I got into business ownership, is she was just like, I don't care what happens, right? Because black women are labeled aggressive, and, anytime that you assert yourself, then, she's mean, or however the case may be. And so that is how I ended up in business, because she showed me literally the entire ropes. She showed me all of the things that I needed to do. And I went out, started my own. My first year in business, I made $270,000. My second year in business, I made $1.3 million. And I was just like, who does this? I was like, this cannot be real life. This cannot be real life. My third year in business, I made like 1.8, almost 2 million. And then COVID. I think we did 1.1, even still in COVID, after I laid off 50 people. And from there, that next year, we did 2 million. And then we did 3.8, and just recently we just hit a little over 5 million in business. So, it's a whole mouthful. But when I tell you failing is inevitable, it is literally inevitable. You need to be able to get back up. And so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how you get back up. What does it look like to rebuild and move forward even when you don't see the pathway, in front of you? So failure is not the end. Your mind would rather hold on to the made up story that you aren't shit than believe the facts that say otherwise. That's the one. I said, when Miss Hilda asked me to come, I was like, are you sure? So every entrepreneur will face failure. It's a reality. It's not pessimism. It is literal reality. That is how we learn. We learn by failing. We learn by doing it wrong and then getting the opportunity to do it right again, right? I use the analogy of babies. If the baby started crawling and then started pulling up and trying to walk, are we just going to take the baby after they fall down the first time and be like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't do it anymore? We're not going to do that, right? That is not the case. And so understanding that failure is a part of the growth cycle, then we then get to define what that looks like for us. And then also the people in this room gets to define what that looks like for them, right? Everybody here, you have a cohort of people that you're working with, and the goal is that you learn from each other's failures as you move through this program and these groups, because after this group is going to be another group. So how do you reframe when you fail? What does that look like? So failure is data. We are definitely looking for data. We're looking to log it, chart it. So one of the things that I do in business is I have a chronology. And I have it in business and in life. And I suggest that you guys get you one too. And it's literally everything that you have done throughout your lifetime. You're just going to list all of the things that you've learned throughout life. So if I was going to have a chronology of that particular timeline, then those are the things that I would say. And then at 3, then now we start something else, right? At 5, this is what happened. At such and such. And if you can remember all of the things, it will be better. Because what that's going to do is it's going to teach you a lesson on how you've overcame and what things and processes, and get in your brain like, hey, at every step, I was able to overcome. There was something that helped me get through. And so if you start doing that in business, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to start seeing the pattern of your own behavior, which is the data, so that you make different decisions faster. That makes sense. Growth versus a fixed mindset, right? So our growth mindset tells us that I failed because I haven't learned the skill yet. But a fixed mindset says that I failed because I'm not cut out for this. So which one are you? Which one do you lean into the most? Because that's going to be the determining factor of how quickly you get up, how quickly that you're able to reposition your staff, how quickly you're able to pivot when things happen. So when 2020 came and, COVID happened, my first question was, okay, we're in home. We have to come out of the homes, right? Because I'm not personally, and I know, my mind frame was, my mind was like, I'm not getting ready to pay all these people workers' comp because they were in somebody's house and now they got COVID. So bring everybody out of the house. We can't have that many cases. Protect the families, protect the kids. So that was number one. So my next step was, if we bring everybody out of the house, what do we need to do next? What does it look like to have telehealth? Have they authorized telehealth services? Next step was, if we let all of these people go because I can't afford to keep them all on payroll, then what happens to my employee rate with the EDD office? So what do we need to do? And I was like, okay, so do we run the risk of keeping all of these people employed, or do we make the shift, fire them all, make them at will, and then that way they're able to get their unemployment, and we'll be able to bring them back and bring them back slowly as we came. So I think that was like one of the successful patterns that I was able to see, to be able to shift quickly and then end up still making 1.1, where most of everybody in my industry went down at minimum 50%. So how quickly are you able to make that shift? So one of the things that I have is an Elevate framework. I teach this in my program, Strategic Behavior Consultant. One, I am a behavior analyst. I am a board certified behavior analyst. So I am trained to look at the bigger picture and then be able to bring it back down to size and then break it down into a skill to where you're able to move forward and make decisions fairly quickly. So when we're talking about the engage aspect of it, we're identifying the environmental factors. We're going to modify our surroundings to prevent similar failures. On the other side of that is, in business, this is where you're making your quick decisions. This is where your short-term decisions. So as you're making those short-term decisions, that's the initial phase. That is where you are when you first start your business, right? Like, how many decisions am I making on the fly? You might want to be able to count that. What does that look like when I have to make that decision quickly, right? And long term, we kind of get into more in vision, right? That's where I am actually looking forward, seeing where things are, and making decisions for the future. I know I jumped ahead, but your leverage aspect of it is your behavior. So we're recognizing specific behaviors that led to the failure, and then we're implementing what we would consider in behavior analysis a replacement behavior. Because in order to change a behavior, you have to replace it with a new one. Your reinforcement has to match what it is that you want to change, and you have to have a specific replacement behavior to change the behavior that you want. If you don't like walking, then maybe we walk and listen to a book. If you are a social person, maybe you don't walk by yourself. You're never ever going to go back walking again because now it's boring. I don't have anybody to talk to. You need to go get yourself into a club. And if we take it into business, same thing. If you're a social person, you shouldn't be working technically by yourself. It's not going to be fun for you. It's going to be hard, right? And that's what that little air quotes, because everybody likes to say, oh my God, it's so hard. It's not hard. It's you have placed some kind of barrier and or have not set enough boundaries to then make a different decision, right? Envision, these are your capabilities. What am I capable of? I'm going to identify some skills to develop, and then I'm going to see growth, and failure. I'm going to see failure as a growth opportunity. Okay? What are your actual beliefs? If you feel like training people is a waste of time, then guess what? It's going to be a waste of time. If you feel like people cannot learn, they're not going to learn. So you are exactly what your language is saying. So what do you believe about your business? The next thing is align. What do I identify as? Do you identify as an actual business owner? Do you identify as the skill that you are? Right? So if you're a plumber, are you just a plumber or are you a business owner? Because if you think that you're a plumber, guess what you're going to do? You're just going to continue to fix things because that is what they teach you on how to be a plumber. Your whole job is to make sure that shit don't happen.
That's you just wanted to do it.
It was in my head. I couldn't help myself. That is your whole job as a plumber, right? And so you need to make sure that your mindset is different. Your mindset says that I'm a business owner, which means that I think beyond, right, the actual job and into other things that need to happen. So how do you identify? Transform and empower. So when we transform, we connect our failures with a larger purpose. And empower, we find a higher meaning. And then we empower other people to do that thing. This is now where we're taking our thought process and encouraging all of the other people to do what we need them to do. So I am going to send this to Mr. Brian because there are some interactive exercises that I want you guys to be able to do on your own. So you're going to do a failure audit, right? We're going to write down one current challenge. You're going to write down what needs to stop. What is your actual self-talk around it? And then what is your replacement strategy? You're going to do an unworthiness check. You're going to look at the signs, including talking yourself out of opportunities and downplaying your achievements. You are going to start with some pre-mortem planning, right? So a lot of people don't look at like, okay, I have this activity. What can actually fail in this activity? And just list it all out. List everything that's in your head. Here's the reasons why everything is going to fail. That's your pre-mortem, right? Because we're getting ready to bury all of this stuff. And then you're going to get some rapid feedback on how to create a system to get market feedback quickly. And then we're going to use our support network. After you do the how could this fail, you're also going to do on the other side is what are all the reasons that it would work? You're going to plan for your failures, right? And then celebrate the growth. Plan for your failures, celebrate the growth. So we have some practical strategies. 48-hour rule. The first 48, feel all of the emotions. Get all of that out. This is all of the things that can go wrong. This is how I feel about it. This is why these people don't listen. And I keep trying to have them do X, Y, and Z. The contractors are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. All of the things. You have a 48-hour rule. The next 24 hours, you are going to extract the lessons. What did I learn from it? What decision did I make? Right? Because we are going to take extreme ownership of everything that's happening within our business. And then you're going to have your failure resume. This is where your chronology comes into place, where you're listing out the things that didn't work. So every year I just go in and create another section for 2025. And you can do this per quarter, or you can do this at the end of the year. At the end of the year, you're probably not going to remember for real. So I would suggest you do it per quarter. We use 90IO, right? And so that kind of tracks all of our failures just in general. But you also need to do that personally, right? It's not enough just to track your failures in business. You also have to track your personal failures and what you feel failed in that moment. And it's okay to call it a failure, because that is where we learn to grow. It failed. It did not work. You failed, and it's okay. It did not work. What are we going to do about it? We need to get back up, fight again another day. And then what's your replacement protocol? So shifting from why me to what now? From I should have known to now I know. The problem is we cannot continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again, right? So we have to learn. So if you haven't heard of the book, Who, Not How, it talks about basically how as a society we've been trained to figure out the how. And that is, it's opposite. We need to figure out who. Who can help us, especially as a business owner? Who can actually do this job? If I don't like doing it, then who can I find that actually does this very well? And it doesn't have to be that you bring on a full paid employee. You can go to Upwork. You can go to Fiverr, right? You can go to multiple different places. You can call a friend of a friend. Hey, I have a COO. And people ask me all the time, hey, Keisha, where'd you get her from? Because when I tell you this girl is freaking phenomenal, she is phenomenal. And I literally put something out and said, I'm looking for an executive assistant. And I put that on Facebook. Somebody said, hey, I think I know just the right person for you. Now, it was somebody that used to work for me, and she knew my temperament, and I think she knew this girl's temperament, right? Because the people that know you the best are already surrounding you. And when she came in, I was like, perfect. How are we going to do this? Because I'm running through people. I'm very strict. There's things that I like done. I don't like to repeat myself. I want you to take initiative, but I don't want you to take that much initiative. I don't want you going all half-cocked and doing stuff that I don't want you to do, but I want you to listen to what I'm saying without being in my face kind of person, right? I am absolutely a very, very high D, right? I'm not getting ready to say the right things at all times. So how are we going to do this? I said, hey, how do you like to work? And I brought her in as a contractor. And I said, if this 30 days works, then we'll continue. She's been with me now for the last 3 years. When I tell you that girl runs my business, she runs my business. So going through Indeed and Glassdoor and all of the regular places that they tell you to go to is not always the best situation. You might have to think outside of the box. You might have to figure out what that looks like for you. And then from not cut out for this to still learning. We are all still learning. I tell my kids all the time, I tell them you have 3 jobs. You're born, you don't have a choice. You're here. You die, you don't have a choice. It's going to happen. Now, the other one is kind of optional. You're supposed to be here to procreate. That is the job. Everybody here on earth has a reproductive system, animals to mammals to people alike. Everybody here is supposed to procreate. Now, what you do in between that is your decision. That's your purpose. That is whatever is inside of you. You may, advance the world, right? We never knew what AI was before 2024. At least I never heard of it. What? I mean, outside of the Terminator. But as we are still here learning, and as you guys can see, that computer is learning way faster. If you are not learning AI, if you don't have somebody being innovative on your team, if you're not doing the things that you need to do, then you are going to get left behind. You're going to have to be innovative. And you can't be innovative if you are afraid of failing. Like they're listening to us. All right, so your challenges as a business owner is identify one challenge, current failure. We are going to apply the Elevate framework. We're going to develop an action plan, and then you're going to find an accountability partner. That is your job today. And then key takeaways for today is that failure is feedback, not a verdict. It's not a sentence. It's just feedback, right? When I first started, when I first came into the industry, we were not set up yet for insurance to take over paying for kids with autism diagnoses. And so we had to deal with the regional center. Well, regional center, they'll pay you. They pay you well. However, they pay you on a 45-day lag, right? So you work the 30, you then have to wait till like the 20th to get paid. It's horrible. Well, of course, I didn't know any better. And I was pushing along. I had my other job where I was working 18 hours a day and doing all of the things to make sure that this particular job covered these particular kids, right? And could sustain the business because I got paid from that a little quicker than regional center. Well, what ended up happening is in 2028, the entire country decided that insurance is going to pay for kids. And so the regional center, somebody there was like, hey, Keisha, they're getting ready to transfer all of these kids over to insurance. And I want to make sure that you're set up because the larger companies are going to get those particular kids, right? And so I'm going to bombard you. She was like, it's going to be uncomfortable. Now, mind you, I told you we're on a 45-day lag. She hit me from going from 20 kids to 75 kids in little over a month and a half. Right? So not only did I have to boost up my employees, I also boosted up payroll, and I didn't know anything about funding. So I took the hard money loans that where you pay back daily and or weekly. And I was just like, what is this? And then realized, I was like, well, I got the money coming in, I'll just pay it back. Not knowing that there's all of this other stuff in between. And this was 2018. And so at some point, I think I didn't pay ADT because I couldn't afford payroll. I couldn't afford to pay my taxes and payroll. And then they were slow with the money coming in. And then the transition was slow coming in. And I was just like, okay, I either pay my payroll or I pay the taxes. What am I going to do? So you know what I did. I paid the payroll and I didn't pay the taxes. Well, 3 years later, of course, that was just like, hey, now you owe us this money. I am the person that will go all the way up to the line. And I'm going to look over and be like, what? If I fall, how far down can I actually go? And they said, well, you just might have to just pay a little extra. I can deal with a little extra. It ended up being 3 times the employee tax. It was horrible. I mean, they took a plan, right? So even when you think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, there is something that's happening on the end of that. Will I ever do it again? If I have to, I'll probably pay it back a little sooner, right? I'll make sure I'm a little more diligent, right? I'll make sure I go get loans. I'll make sure I come talk to the people at Impact.
You got your back. Don't hard money loans.
Right? No more hard money loans. So I know better. So that when I want to say is failure is feedback. What did I learn from that? I learned that, there is a certain line and the government don't play. That's what I learned. Might want to take heed a little faster, right? I might want to learn the lesson a little quicker, but also learn how to manage my money. I learned how to say no. Thank you for the opportunity, and no thank you for all of what's going to bring this opportunity, right? I learned how to manage tons of people under a lot of stress. So today, what happens? I just teach that to the next generation. I teach that to my people. I teach them how to mitigate risk, right? The conversations that we're having, all of those things are crucial to building a business. Today, I don't work 18 plus hours a day. Matter of fact, I'm calling her, telling her, asking her, what do you want me to do? What do you need me to do today? She's like, boss, it's the other way around. Because they are doing all of the things. If you build a successful team, you will not have to work that hard. If you build your team up and put all of the systems in place, you will be able to sustain and grow without a lot of stresses. So growth requires attention. Your support matters. And you need to make sure that you're always looking at the bottom line. So the winners aren't those who never fail. They're those who fail faster, learn quicker, and grow stronger. And I think I made 30 minutes. All right. So, is there any questions? Anything? And I will send this PowerPoint to, let me actually go in here and turn it off.
Yeah, I'll definitely be sharing this PowerPoint with them and follow up, so thank you for giving that to me when time comes. Does anyone have any questions for Lakeisha? I know her journey alone is pretty inspiring. Not to mention there are a lot of good lessons that can be taken away. But are there any questions or any inquiries that anyone has for Lakeisha after this amazing presentation? Go ahead, Jackie.
I was gonna ask, what did it take to move from like 1 million to 5 million? Is it the infrastructure in the business? I mean, how were you able to build that?
What it takes to move from 1 million to 5 million is systems. And putting those structures, those systems in place, having your SOPs, having things that they can follow, right? They need to know what's in your head. And a lot of times we as business owners want to think that we're the only ones that can do a job. It also takes letting go and being confident and secure in who you are to be able to go back and pick it up and reteach, right? Moving from 1 million to 5 million is insane when I think about it just in totality. But 1 year we took time and worked out all of our systems and products. The next year, which was kind of like last year, we put in all of the SOPs and make sure that they're all in place. And then this year, we are focused on making sure that the people follow the rules. It has been a process to get here. Also getting the people out that don't work, that don't get it, they don't want it, they don't have the capability. So when you're assessing that Elevate framework, we are looking for exactly those same things in people. So when you go back to this Elevate framework, we're looking at environment. What environment are these individuals in? What behaviors are they showing as far as building a team? What capabilities do they have? We're looking at their beliefs. What do they identify as, right? Because if you're looking for somebody that's going to take your business and grow it to the next level, and that is not their belief that they can actually grow something, it's kind of like me. If you told me, hey, Keisha, I'm going to give you this plant, and I tell you right now, I kill all plants. I do not believe that I am a plant mom. I had 6 kids. I'm done. I don't want to nurture anything. Now, talk to me in another 10 years. Right now, those kids are 19, and talk to me in another 10 years. I might have a different answer for you. But if my belief is that those are the things that is not going to work for me as an individual, and you have somebody on your team that you're trying to actively grow, and that's not their belief system, they will not believe in your cause, and they will not be able to move your vision forward. So you have to have people on your team that are going to move your vision forward. And so one thing that I've noticed is you have your initial startup, and these people are all jazzed because you have a business and they want to work with you. Those people leave after about 3 years. The excitement is over. You're no longer a new business. You're no longer with a new project. So you go through a different restructuring, and people then start to leave. That's when you start bringing in and you start asking some different questions. You start looking for some different qualities, right? And so now we're at the point where we get them out quicker, get the people out quicker, and then we're focused on how are you here to help grow the company. So we recently actually just did a disc for all leadership. And what I noticed was we have a lot of C's. We have a lot of CS's, right? And so within that, we don't have a lot of D's. I'm a high D. My COO is a high D. We need more D's in leadership positions. So as now we start to look, and you start to refine, you start to do all of the different things that's going to build your business, you'll start to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So hopefully that answered your question.
Does anyone else have a question? I'll keep the floor open for a couple of moments here. Yeah, go ahead, Nanette. I think your audio is being funky again, Nanette. I see you unmuted your microphone, but we can't hear you just yet. You might have to jump out and jump back in if you want to pop your question in the chat.
You can try unmuting and seeing if it works this time. If not, you might have to pop back out and pop in. Yeah, nothing yet, my friend. I'm sorry. You might have to pop out and pop back in and see if that helps.
I had a question for you.
Yes, sir.
This whole topic about how you did it and putting your operations and SOPs and processes, designing it for success, this is exactly the conversation we need to hear. So,
Oh, well, thank
do
you.
you have any more you can share about how you went about doing that? I know it's different for every business, but how did you organize those processes, procedures, and test them for efficacy to know that, you could plug somebody in and they could execute for you?
I think it starts with your vision, right? Knowing what you want. And I think when I first started, I knew what I was supposed to do as a profession and had an overall thought of how it worked. And I never really shared that with the team. And so I was the answer person.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to get all of that stuff out of you and onto paper or into other individuals. Today is easier because they have all the AI in the world, right? So every conversation that you have, just turn on your Otter, right? Record it. If you're talking to somebody, I just have my Otter on just in general. I don't care what's happening. I have a transcriber on. Hey, what did you say about X, Y, and Z, right? So I think also what was very crucial is starting with one department at a time. Do not overwhelm yourself with thinking that you have to do it all at one time. So in my company, I have my clinical staff, right? And then I have my admin staff. And so my admin is where I started because the clinical already kind of has systems. I just needed to kind of plug and play some administrative tasks into their clinical day. But I started with admin, and then I just started at one department at a time, What is it that, asking the question, what's lacking? What do I need to know that maybe I'm not paying attention to? Is this a 2-person job or is this actually a 1-person job? Right? Today, you got to ask yourself, is this a 1-person job and is this an AI agent job, right? Like, now you kind of have to ask yourself, how can we automate this? What does the automation look like? But we just went like department by department, and then we started getting people, heads of those departments, and start making it their job to tell people what to do. And then also my expectation as a CEO, I kind of equate this kind of like being married in a sense, right? You're not going to get 100% from that person. I'm not going to like you all the time. You're not thinking like I'm thinking. We are not the same person. So if I can get 80% of whatever it is that you have going on, then I will be okay. I will be okay knowing that this is not going to be done at 100% of what it is that I'm looking for. I can't even do anything at 100%. So the expectation that you can is astronomical. Like, that's too much. So I think understanding, changing my mindset, the expectations of what it is that I wanted was the first thing that needed to happen. Understanding what it is that I wanted. And sometimes I didn't even know, going into the CEO groups and listening to them and saying, I never really thought of it that way. I think I came and saw Brian and he was like, hey, have you tried EOS? I haven't. That has been great, just understanding the basics of what do I need to know to move through? How do I get people to be proactive instead of reactive, right? How can I get you to be proactive? What does it look like for you to be proactive? And not just me telling them what my expectation is, what does it look like to you to be proactive? And then realizing that maybe you're not the right fit for this particular job. So I need to either shift where I have you and bring somebody in that can do the job, or we need to, unfortunately, part ways.
That actually leads well into the next question she put in the chat there. She was asking, did you seek business advisors, or I guess the question should be, how did you seek business advisors, mentors, and mastermind groups to help guide you?
When I first started, I started off honestly with SCORE. So I went to SCORE and I had that guy that came in. He was such a cool guy, but he was so funny. He was like, yeah, just do this. And then he'd like scurry away and do whatever he was doing. I looked for resources, the Chamber of Commerce, all of the things that people tell you to do. I went to those different places. Funny enough, I went to the Women's Business Center and I met my friend now, Levon, and that was actually kind of crazy because I walked in the room and I was like, look, I think I stumbled upon $1 million business. And she was like, first of all, people don't stumble into $1 million business. I was like, oh no, I think I did. This industry is booming. I don't have no forecast of where I'm going to be, but I'm almost positive at the end of the year, I will have made $1 million. She was like, oh, okay, whatever. I was like, I need to understand where and who do I talk to understand the accounting aspect, because this guy was telling me he wanted me to pay like $60+ to do bookkeeping, and I was like, that sounds excessive. And he was telling me it was like $60 an hour and he needed about 20 to 30 hours, and I was just like, I don't think that sounds right, but of course I don't do bookkeeping. So, and she was just like, yeah. And then I went back to her, I think a year later, and I was like, hey, I didn't just make $1 million, I made like 1.3. She was just like, I was like, so I actually really need your help. Like, I really, really need your help because I don't know what I'm doing. So I think the biggest thing and the best answer to that is ask a lot of questions. A lot of people, especially in the Black community, they tell you don't tell your business. And I don't know how widely that is in other ethnicities and whatnot, but in our community, they tell us don't tell your business. You don't want people to be all up in your stuff, and that is so far from the truth. And so you do not want to listen to that. You want to talk about where you are. You want to talk about what you're doing. Do you have to get deep down in the nitty gritty? Right? Do I have to be like, oh yeah, I made $5 million this past year, and this is how much I took home? You don't have to tell people that information, but revenue speaks, right? And if people can do quick math, they're like, okay, if she's decent, she took at least 15 to 20% home. On the bottom end, she took this much. On the top end, she probably took this much. Tell me how you did that. Talking to other people, making sure that you are asking the right questions. There's another book, John Maxwell, Great Leaders Ask Great Questions, is an amazing book. I would tell you, read and or get information, because the art of asking questions is literally an art. And the art of asking an open-ended question to really get your answer is out of this world. But today it's easier because you have AI in your pocket, literally. So when you need to ask a question, go to AI and be like, hey, here's my dumbass question. Right? And I think once you get really, really good at asking questions, right, when you go meet a CPA, don't just get the CPA, go see 3 CPAs. And ask them all the same questions, get a feel of what their information. Somebody good is going to give you all the information that you need. They are going to off the top. I see a guy, I don't know if anybody's familiar with him, Gary Foltz.
Yes.
Oh my God. I went to see, somebody sent me to him, he's an attorney. And he was like, where's your husband? I was like, first of all, this is my business. It was like, contrary to popular belief, it's not just your business. It's you and your husband's business, because you did it while you guys were married. So come back when you have a husband. I was like, oh, okay, I guess. So our first meeting, he sat me and my husband down. Did not charge us a dime. Now, mind you, this man charges about $400 plus an hour. I think it might be $500 today. He sat us down and he gave us blow by blow. When you sign this, make sure it's signed this way. When you do this, make sure it's this way. And he sat us down for a full hour. It ain't really, he'd be like, whatever, girl, do what you're doing, right? But he sat us both down. He called me, I think about 3 years ago. He's like, Keisha, I don't see your will and your trust, and we need to get it done. So when you start talking to people, start interviewing them, you will find good people that will look out for you. And he calls pretty constant, to be like, hey, I need your minutes. I need this. Where is that? Have you guys thought about this? Where your money is going? You need to start diversifying your funds, getting into groups like Vistage and other executive peer groups, get into the rooms, because what you'll find is everybody is saying and doing the exact same thing.
You still have a question, Shanika? I see your hand is still up. Oh, yes. Okay.
Hi, Lakeisha. My name is Shanika. I have 3 questions for you.
All
When
right.
you first started, did you start off as a BA or a BCBA? And then I know that's my first question. Were you a BA, or did you just get into it as a BCBA? And then the second question, when you were hired at the company and you were promoted to run the organization, how long did it take for you to start your own business from that point? And then the third question, do you outsource your billing for ABA?
So I'll start with the last question and go backwards. So no, we don't outsource our billing. I actually have a biller within the company. I find that better just because the billing outsourcing it is like, they want to take like 3%, and I'm not really about that life. And if you do the math, you come out better just training somebody up. The other questions that you asked, when I started my business, yes, I was a BCBA. I had passed my test. I went in, I guess, I passed my test in August. I went and got a job working for this one company. I actually didn't stay there long. And then I ended up working as an independent contractor because the job was paying me like $5,000 or $6,000, and then the independent contracting was paying me like $10,000, $12,000. So I was like, no, let me go this way. So that's what I did with that. When I worked for that other company, I was not a BCBA. I was actually just a supervisor, and I've always had leadership ability and qualities about me. And so I think she just saw it, because when I went in, she was a brand new company. So when I went in, she only had like 30 clients. And by the time I left, she had over 150 with all of her systems in place. I am absolutely an observer of people, systems, and things. So because I had already gone through training, I worked for Los Angeles County Office of Education. They actually paid you for training and they trained you well. And so I knew the systems that needed to be in place for her company. And so that's what I did when I went in. Hey, where's your logo? Like, I helped her create her logo. You know, I helped her put in all of her documents. I helped her do pretty much put the foundations of her business together. And so that's when she saw. However, I didn't pass my test there. What I do say there is I learned how to be efficient with my time. I learned how to get things done quickly and in an efficient manner. I wasn't necessarily as clinically sound as I should have been, because I took my test within her company a few times and failed. And then I went over to another company where I was only doing clinical, and that's where I gained my clinical, skills. I knew application-wise what to do on this end, but then I knew how to critically think on another end, and then that's when I passed my test. I took my test actually 5 different times. I failed that test 5 times before I passed. Yeah, it was crazy. So I told you I graduated with straight D's, so I had to literally learn how to study. Like, I knew how to surface study. I didn't know how to study for who I was and what it is that I needed. And when I got fed up from failing, you needed 400 to pass. And one of my tests, I got 396. I was sick to my stomach. So sick to my stomach. Oh my God. It was the most horrible feeling I ever had in life. And at that point, I was like, okay, you have to focus. And then at that point, I just kind of drilled in. I went to Starbucks. I color coded. I figured out my VAK, right? Your visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I figured out like which one I am. So I am very much an auditory and visual learner. Reading things, because apparently I wasn't taught proper reading as a child. Listening and observing is how I built up those particular strengths. They're obviously stronger now, right? I can comprehend better now, but I had to relearn how to get the information to me. So I am a much better visual auditory. So I color coordinated all of my notes, and then I read them, put it on a recorder, and then listened to it back while I was driving, and then I passed with flying colors. Yeah. So, which is, right, failure is inevitable. Growing is optional. I could have been like, you know what, I guess I wasn't meant to be a BCBA. Well, thank you.
We can take one last question. I know we're at time, and I want to make sure we have time for our check-ins. Anybody else have any questions for Lakeisha before we wrap up for today? We sent her on her way with a huge thank you. Awesome.
Thank you, guys. I do want to say thank you so much for having me. I love doing this. I don't think we have enough of these conversations. People don't talk about how they fail. I think I failed so much that I'm kind of immune to it at this point. I feel like, I didn't die.
Right. I'm still here.
I'm still here. I get to go another day. IRC, they sent me $900 when they were supposed to be sending me $100,000. I'll be all right. I will be okay. So I think that process, you learn. If you fail more, you learn quicker. And you build tough skin. So fail more, guys. Fail more.
Right. And grow.
And grow. And grow.